Ron Johnson. In 2011, JCPenney hired the man who built Apple's retail stores and gave him the keys to a 100-year-old department store. 17 months later, $4.3 billion in revenue was gone. The market cap was cut in half. But the real disaster wasn't the money. It was the one thing he refused to do before changing everything. He didn't test any of it. He killed all coupons, eliminated every sale event, and ripped out clearance racks overnight, replacing them with everyday low pricing. When his team pushed back, he said they didn't test at Apple, which is true. But Apple customers weren't clipping coupons from the Sunday paper. A new car costs about $40,000. A house, maybe $300,000. Johnson wiped out enough revenue to hand every JCPenney customer a $100 gift card and still have billions left. Same-store sales cratered 32%, the worst quarter in modern retail history. JCPenney ran a national TV ad apologizing to its own customers. And here's something you'll notice on this list. The worse a CEO performs, the softer they land. Johnson went on to found Enjoy Technology. It also went bankrupt. So to recap, destroyed a department store, started something new, and that failed too. His replacement was the same man he'd replaced, Mark Tritton. In 2019, Bed Bath & Beyond hired a top Target executive to save the company. By April 2023, it was bankrupt. Revenue dropped 29%. But here's the part that doesn't make sense. While the company was sinking, they spent $1 billion buying back their own stock. Tritton ripped out beloved national brands and replaced them with cheap private labels overnight. No testing, no gradual transition. The same strategy that took Target a decade to build, he tried to force through in months. Revenue stayed flat at about $6 billion, but profits swung from a $600 million gain to a $559 million loss. That's like earning $60,000 a year and suddenly owing $56,000. Same job, same desk. The private labels were so unwanted that stores had to discount them 80% just to move them. He was fired in June 2022. Then he sued the bankrupt company for $6.76 million in unpaid severance. His executive team collected $71 million while overseeing a 29% revenue decline. Normal stuff. Marissa Mayer. In 2012, Yahoo hired Google's 20th employee to save the company. Over 5 years, she made 53 acquisitions totaling $2.3 billion. Almost none produced anything. But the one purchase that should have been impossible to mess up, she found a way. Tumblr, bought for $1.1 billion, eventually sold for under $3 million. That's a 99.7% loss. Like buying $1 million house and selling it for $3,000. Most people think Mayer doubled Yahoo's stock price, and technically she did. But analysts attributed the entire gain to an Alibaba stake she inherited, not anything she built. She also failed to disclose 2 data breaches affecting 3 billion accounts, which knocked $350 million off the Verizon sale price. She left with $23 million in severance on top of $239 million earned during her tenure. She later admitted Yahoo should have bought Netflix for $4 billion instead of Tumblr. Netflix is worth over $140 billion today. 53 acquisitions, $2.3 billion spent, 0 products to show for it. The Alibaba stake did all the work. Eddie Lampert. In 2005, a hedge fund manager merged Kmart and Sears into the 3rd largest retailer in America. 13 years later, he'd turned a $27 billion company into the largest retail bankruptcy of its era. But the question isn't why Sears failed. It's why the CEO was running it from a yacht named after an Ayn Rand novel. Lampert treated Sears like an asset-stripping operation. He sold real estate, funded buybacks, and refused to spend a dime on maintenance. Roofs leaked, escalators broke, shelves sat empty. He managed remotely from a $38 million estate near Miami, known locally as Billionaire Bunker, and pitted divisions against each other in an Ayn Rand-inspired competition model. A typical Sears store was worth maybe $5 million. A good neighborhood has a few hundred homes. $27 billion is enough to give every Sears employee $200,000. Instead, they got nothing. When the company filed for bankruptcy in October 2018, Lampert used his own hedge fund to buy back the gutted assets at a discount. He named his $130 million yacht Fountainhead. It cost more than most of the stores he let rot. He bought back the corpse of the company he killed, Dennis Muilenburg. 346 people died in 2 Boeing 737 MAX crashes. The first, Lion Air in October 2018, killed 189. Boeing knew the MCAS flight system had a safety problem. Internal communications later revealed employees calling it designed by clowns, supervised by monkeys. One employee said they wouldn't put their family on the plane. Between the 2 crashes, Muilenburg personally edited a press release declaring the aircraft as safe as any that has ever flown the skies. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines went down. 157 more dead. He'd prioritized speed to market to compete with Airbus, cutting corners on a system that could override pilots without their knowledge. The total crisis cost exceeded $18 billion. That's roughly $53 million per victim, more than most of their families received. Boeing pled guilty to criminal fraud conspiracy in 2024. Muilenburg received $62.2 million in exit compensation. The SEC fined him $1 million. The pattern holds: 346 dead, and the man in charge walked away with $62 million. And that's just 5 CEOs who turned billion-dollar companies into wreckage. If you want to see who destroyed even more, hit subscribe. Thanks. Elizabeth Holmes. In 2003, a 19-year-old Stanford dropout founded a blood testing company that would reach a $9 billion valuation. The technology never worked. Not partially, not sometimes, not in early prototypes. Never. But how did she raise over $700 million for something that didn't exist? Holmes claimed her device could run hundreds of tests from a single finger prick. In reality, Theranos secretly used commercial machines from other companies while pretending their own device was doing the work. They deployed faulty tests in Walgreens locations, giving real patients wrong results. Her board included Henry Kissinger, 2 former secretaries of defense, and a former Secretary of State. Not a single doctor. Kissinger invested $6 million personally. George Shultz's own grandson became the whistleblower, and Schultz initially sided with Holmes over his own grandchild. Forbes named her the youngest self-made female billionaire, then revised her net worth to 0. A small medical lab costs about $1 million to equip. A full hospital, maybe $500 million. $9 billion could have funded real breakthroughs for decades. Instead, it funded a company whose core product was a press conference. She was convicted in January 2022 and is serving over 11 years. Her board had more secretaries of defense than scientists. The technology never worked. Not once. Jeff Immelt. On September 7, 2001, Jeff Immelt became CEO of the most valuable company in the world. 4 days later, the towers fell. Over the next 16 years, he destroyed more than $150 billion in shareholder value. $1 million a day for 410 years. $45 for every person in the United States. But the part that still baffles people is the jet. He spent $9.5 billion on Alstom's power business, doubling down on fossil fuels. That led to a $22 billion write-down. He expanded GE Capital into hidden liabilities, and the whole time, an empty backup jet followed his primary jet everywhere he flew. 2 planes, every trip, 1 completely empty. When caught, he claimed he didn't know. Records showed it continued until 2017. Most people think GE's decline was inevitable. It wasn't. Immelt actively made it worse. And the golden parachutes keep getting bigger. He collected over $200 million in total compensation. $1,000 in GE the day he started was worth $1,243 when he left. The same 1,000 in the S&P 500, 3,206. GE was in the Dow for 110 years. Shortly after Immelt left, they removed it. Adam Neumann. In 2019, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. By 2023, it was bankrupt. SoftBank alone lost $14 billion. A decent office lease runs maybe $50,000 a year. A whole building, a few million. 14 billion could fund 47,000 startups at $1 million each. But here's the question nobody could answer. How do you lose 47 billion and walk away richer than when you started? Neumann built a real estate subletting company and pitched it as tech. He trademarked the word "we" personally, then sold it back to WeWork for $5.9 million. He bought buildings and leased them to his own company. He cashed out $700 million before the IPO even filed. The S1 mentioned community over 150 times. Profit? Barely at all. The company was hemorrhaging $1.9 billion a year. He smoked so much marijuana on his private jet that the crew needed oxygen masks. After announcing layoffs, he passed out tequila and brought out Run DMC. His exit package? $970 million for shares, $185 million consulting fee, $500 million credit line. He lost $47 billion of other people's money, walked away with $1.7 billion, and someone gave him $350 million to try again. Sam Bankman-Fried. On November 2nd, 2022, CoinDesk published an article questioning the finances of crypto exchange FTX. 10 days later, the company was bankrupt. How does a $32 billion company collapse in 10 days? It was the fastest destruction of personal wealth in history. $26.5 billion to zero, $2.65 billion per day, $110 million per hour, $1.8 million per minute. Fortune had put him on their cover, asking if he was the next Warren Buffett. He wore shorts and a t-shirt, slept on a beanbag, and drove a Corolla while living in a $40 million Bahamas penthouse. The genius altruist image was entirely manufactured. He stole $8 billion in customer funds to prop up his own trading firm run by his ex-girlfriend. He donated $40 million to political campaigns with stolen money. He built a fake insurance fund display on the FTX website showing fabricated numbers. Both his parents are Stanford law professors. When Binance announced they were selling their FTX tokens, $6 billion in withdrawals hit in 72 hours. His ex-girlfriend got 2 years, he got 25. Buffett is still free. Dick Fuld. On September 15, 2008, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. $639 billion, the largest in American history, 6 times bigger than the previous record, more than the GDP of Sweden. It triggered a global financial crisis that erased trillions. But Fuld had multiple chances to save the firm. He refused every single one. He'd leveraged Lehman at 30-to-1 ratios and used an accounting trick called Repo 105 to hide $50 billion off the balance sheet. Bear Stearns had collapsed 6 months earlier as a warning. He ignored it. The stock fell from $65 to 21 cents on its last trading day. Most people think the government simply let Lehman fail. The truth is simpler. Fuld refused deals that could have saved it. Weeks after the bankruptcy wiped out employees' savings, he transferred his $13.75 million Florida mansion to his wife for $100 to shield it from lawsuits. A congressman told him, "Your company is bankrupt. Our economy is in crisis, but you get to keep $480 million. He transferred his mansion for $100. He kept $480 million. He was never charged. The world paid the bill. If you made it through all 10, you just watched over $1 trillion in combined value disappear, and almost every CEO on this list is still rich. If you want more stories like these, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.